Welcome to the 160th edition of Spooky Reviews from Spooky Ventures. I'm Gary Hill, and I'm both your host and your reviewer. This time around, I'm looking at a 10th anniversary edition Blu-ray of a movie called Plaguers. Now, I should mention that the movie was actually released in 2008, meaning that it was 16 years old when this was released. The version we have here is the first Blu-ray release of it, and it uses the version that was previously released for the 10th anniversary. This movie comes from the husband and wife team of Josephina Sykes and Brad Sykes. They also did High Death and High Fear, both of which I previously reviewed. Like those movies, this is definitely indie and low budget. The film is a spaceship-based horror movie, so it's both science fiction and horror. Of course, comparisons to the Alien franchise are there, and the tagline, "In space, everyone screams," leans heavily into that comparison. That said, this is definitely not a clone of Alien by any means. It does draw inspiration from it, though. One element that felt very much like Alien to me was Steve Railsback's character Tarver. I will save the reason he seems like a pretty direct link to Alien for later, because some might consider it a spoiler. Now, for me, there were a lot of other subtle links to other movies. One is the sphere energy source artifact that the crew is smuggling to Earth. It's called Thanatos, but it definitely makes me think of the Lochnar from Heavy Metal. It even looks a little like it. The plot line gets complicated when the crew of the main ship, the Pandora, receives a distress call from another ship. By the way, that ship name seems clever because the Pandora winds up infested by a dangerous evil before this is all over, making it a Pandora's box that will bring disaster if it's opened. The Pandora gets hijacked by space pirates, but a much bigger threat is unleashed as Thanatos starts infecting human hosts. Now, that's about all the plot I want to reveal at this point to avoid spoilers. However, I was talking about references. The scenes when they board the Diana, which is the ship sending out the distress call, reminds me of the scene in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, where the Enterprise crew boards the Regulus space station is looking for survivors. There are other things that make me think of Star Trek as well, but those are less direct and subtler. Now, this movie does play out rather like a zombie movie, too. I wouldn't compare it to a specific zombie movie, really, but more in a general way. I definitely get a pretty big Evil Dead feeling at times. There is almost a Doctor Who vibe here at points. Mind you, this is much darker than any Doctor Who I've ever seen, other than maybe The Waters of Mars. Then again, that particular episode hadn't been made when this movie was released. Now, you can definitely tell that this movie is indie and low budget, but as long as you go into it knowing that, it is not a big detriment. I mean, I doubt this got any Oscar nominations when it was released, but that's not why we're here, really. We're here for some scares, and we get them. The first part of the film does feel a little slow, but once trouble comes, it comes in fast and furious. There is a real snowball effect where things start small and grow slowly, but suddenly it's a real monster in more ways than one. So I have a couple spoilers to reveal, but before that I will wrap this up. That way, if you don't want to hear the spoilers, you can shut the video off. Overall, this is a solid movie. I think that spaceship-based horror is usually a variant on a haunted house kind of story. It just happens that the house is not on Earth, and you can't leave it without new risks. As far as bonus features, there are some commentaries here, a Q&A from a convention appearance, a making-of featurette, and more. Pretty much all of it has some definite merit, but as I always say, those are literally just bonuses. The main movie is the real draw. That part of this isn't without its issues, but it does a good job. There are a number of reviewers who have really trashed this film. Honestly, I think that they probably don't watch a lot of super low-budget indie horror. You have to have certain expectations going into those kinds of movies, or you will be sorely disappointed. It's really a genre all its own, and if you have an appreciation for it, this has its merits. Now, with that out of the way, if you don't want spoilers, this is the time to shut off the video. I'll give you a couple of moments to head for the exits before I get into it. If you are still with me after I'm done saying this, I'm going to assume you are okay with the spoilers. So let's get to that part of the review. First, Steve Railsback's character Tarver. For some reason, as soon as I saw that character, he gave me a Bishop from Alien vibe. I knew he was an android, or as they call it in this movie, a synthroid. I'm not sure why, but that was no surprise at all for me. The ending seemed to be pretty obvious too. A woman out in space in a single-person escape pod. That's like a direct tie-in to Alien. Of course, things don't go precisely the same way for this woman as they did for Ripley, and we're definitely left with an opening for a sequel that has not happened thus far. And those spoilers wrap up this review video for real, so I'll see you all next time. Spooky Ventures is the home for spooky content and spooky merchandise on the web. Check it out today at spookyventures.com. And remember, always keep it spooky.